There comes a moment in your life when you realize that no matter how many books you read, how many affirmations you repeat, or how many vision boards you create, something still feels stuck. It's like your outer world refuses to move, no matter how much inner effort you make. You wake up, go through the motions, feel a brief spark of hope, and then fall back into the same familiar patterns, the same emotions, the same people, the same energy. And deep down, a quiet voice whispers, "Why does nothing really change?" This is where the deeper truth begins to reveal itself. It's not your environment that is holding you back. It's not luck or timing or even your circumstances. What keeps everything frozen is the identity you've been unconsciously wearing, like a mask that's been glued to your face for so long, you forgot you're even wearing it. You've been trying to change your life while staying loyal to the same version of yourself who created your current reality. And that's why nothing shifts. Because energy doesn't lie. Change doesn't happen when you force it. It happens when you collapse the identity that no longer serves you, the one that's still attached to pain, fear, and limitation. Everything you see in your life right now is a reflection of who you believe yourself to be. Not what you say you want, not what you hope for, but what you are at the deepest level of consciousness. Your relationships, your finances, your health, even your sense of possibility, they all orbit around this hidden self-concept. Think of it like this: reality is a mirror, and that mirror can only reflect what's standing before it. If you keep standing as the same version of you, carrying the same stories, the same energetic signatures, then the mirror can only show you what it always has. You can change the mirror's frame, clean its surface, even shout at it to show you something new. But until you change, the reflection cannot. And yet, we spend so much of our lives trying to change the reflection instead of the source. We chase new outcomes without realizing we're running in circles around the same energetic center. We say we want freedom, but we act like prisoners of our own narratives. We want abundance but still identify as someone who lacks. We want love but still carry the frequency of unworthiness. The truth is, nothing outside of you needs to be fixed. What needs to be seen is the illusion of the self you've been maintaining. The identity that says, "This is just who I am," is the very wall between you and your quantum potential. Every pattern that repeats, every emotion that loops, is a signal pointing you toward what you've been unconsciously protecting, your old self. This is why change can feel so hard, because in order to truly transform, a part of you must die. Not in the physical sense but energetically. The identity collapse is a kind of sacred death. It's the moment your ego realizes it's losing control. And that's when resistance rises. The doubts, the fears, the excuses. But if you can move through that resistance with awareness, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start to sense that the world isn't happening to you, it's happening through you. Every experience becomes a mirror, every emotion a messenger. You begin to feel the subtle energy of your consciousness shaping the matter around you. And in that awareness, you recognize that transformation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about releasing everything that isn't truly you. This realization is both terrifying and liberating. Because the moment you admit that your current identity is the cage, you can no longer pretend to be its prisoner. You can no longer play small, no longer hide behind your old stories. You begin to see that life has been patiently waiting for you to stop trying to fix yourself and start remembering who you really are. The observer, the creator, the infinite awareness behind every experience. So as we move deeper into this journey, I invite you to look at your life not as a series of problems to solve, but as reflections to dissolve. Nothing changes until you collapse the identity that's been creating it. And the collapse doesn't mean destruction, it means release. It means surrendering the false self so that something higher, purer, and more aligned can emerge. In this episode, we'll walk through that process together. We'll uncover the illusion of the fixed self, explore how the old identity holds your reality in place, and learn how to consciously step out of that hologram. This isn't about motivation, it's about metamorphosis. Because once you understand the mechanics of identity and energy, you'll realize that you were never meant to fight for change. You were meant to become it. When you reach that point of inner collapse, something miraculous happens. The version of you that was addicted to struggle simply disappears. What remains is awareness, silent, infinite, and powerful beyond measure. That's where real transformation begins. Not in the mind, not in the effort, but in the stillness that comes when you stop identifying with the story. And that's where we begin. We live inside stories. Every thought you think, every emotion you repeat, every memory you replay is weaving itself into a narrative about who you are. And that narrative becomes your identity, the lens through which you see everything. Most people never realize that their self isn't something fixed or factual. It's a moving projection, a hologram made up of past experiences, beliefs, and emotional patterns. This hologram feels solid only because we keep giving it energy, day after day, by identifying with it. Imagine standing in a room of mirrors. Each mirror reflects a version of you. One shaped by childhood wounds, another by success or failure, another by what others have said about you. Over time, you stop realizing these are reflections. You start believing they're you. That's what the mind does. It constructs a continuity, a story that says, I am this person, I am this way, I can or can't do these things. And the more you believe it, the more the universe bends itself to reflect it back to you. This is the illusion of the fixed self. You think you're living life, but in truth you're living a feedback loop of your own consciousness. Every experience you have is filtered through this inner identity template. If you carry the vibration of, I'm not enough, you'll subconsciously attract situations that reinforce it. If you believe life is hard, your perception will magnetize challenges to match. The universe is infinitely responsive. It's always saying yes to who you think you are. The paradox is that this identity is not real in the ultimate sense. It's a program. A beautifully complex simulation designed to help you navigate physical reality, but only as long as you remember it's just a simulation. The problem begins when you forget that you're the consciousness behind it. When you start mistaking the mask for your face, you lose your creative power. You start reacting instead of creating. You think you have no choice, no control, no say in your own frequency. Let's make this more tangible. Think about how the self-image you hold subtly controls your behavior. If you see yourself as someone who always struggles, you'll unconsciously sabotage opportunities that could lift you out of struggle. If you see yourself as the shy one, you'll energetically withdraw even when you want to connect. These micro-choices, made in milliseconds, are all directed by the subconscious blueprint of identity. It's not logical, it's energetic conditioning. In quantum terms, identity is like a vibrational signature. Every thought and belief you hold emits a frequency that collapses potential outcomes into one particular version of reality. The fixed self is the version of you that keeps choosing the same frequency over and over because it feels safe, even if it's painful. The known is safer than the unknown. And that's why transformation feels so elusive. The ego's number one job is to preserve the familiar self, even at the cost of expansion. Science, psychology, and spirituality are beginning to meet here. Neuroscience shows that identity lives in neural pathways, repetitive circuits wired by emotion. The more you identify as a certain type of person, the stronger those neural grooves become. Spiritually, those grooves are like karmic patterns, energetic loops that replay until awareness interrupts them. That's why awakening often feels like a breakdown. You're not going crazy, you're just witnessing the collapse of your internal map of reality. When you start to see the illusion of the fixed self, life begins to look very different. You stop taking your emotions so personally. You start noticing that your thoughts aren't you, they're habits of frequency. The fear that rises when you try to change isn't proof you're doing something wrong. It's the identity defending its existence. It whispers, stay who you are. Don't risk the unknown. But that voice is not truth, it's survival instinct. And surviving is not the same as living. The moment you recognize that the identity is an illusion, you reclaim a massive amount of energy. You begin to realize that you've been feeding this hologram through attention and belief. Every time you say, that's just how I am, you're anchoring the old pattern in place. Every time you say, this always happens to me, you're coding your reality to repeat itself. Awareness breaks that cycle. Awareness is the light that exposes the mechanism of the illusion. Let's look deeper into how this illusion sustains itself. The old self doesn't survive on logic, it survives on emotion. Each belief has an emotional charge that keeps it active. If your identity was built around fear, guilt, or unworthiness, those emotions act like glue, holding the hologram together. When you try to expand into abundance, those old emotional signatures get triggered. Not because you're failing, but because the old self feels threatened. The discomfort you feel when trying to change isn't resistance, it's the identity collapsing. That's why the first step in transformation isn't to fix yourself but to witness yourself. To observe the character you've been playing with compassion and curiosity. Notice how the same emotional themes keep showing up in different disguises. Notice how your reactions, judgments, and triggers all point back to a singular energetic story. This awareness is not judgment, it's illumination. The illusion loses power when it's seen clearly. The spiritual masters have always said, know thyself, but they didn't mean your personality or preferences. They meant the awareness behind it. The silent witness who has watched every version of you come and go. The one who isn't changing even as everything else shifts. That's the real self, the infinite observer beneath the illusion of identity. When you begin to anchor into that awareness, the grip of the old self starts to loosen. And here's the key insight. You can't transcend an identity you still believe in. You can't manifest a new reality while unconsciously defending the old one. The illusion of the fixed self keeps you looping because it's built on unconscious loyalty, to your family story, to your past pain, to your old definitions of safety. The moment you start seeing these loyalties clearly, they dissolve. You stop needing to protect a version of you that never truly existed. This is the gentle unraveling before the collapse. It's the realization that the you've been protecting is just an echo, a memory made dense by repetition. Nothing in that identity is fixed. It's fluid, reactive, and ready to be recoded. But first, you have to see it for what it is, a projection. Once that understanding settles in your awareness, the next step naturally begins. The collapse of that hologram, the breaking of the old identity's energetic spell. And when that happens, reality itself begins to move. The mirrors shift. The patterns fade. The world no longer reflects who you were, it starts to mirror who you're becoming. That's the transition we step into next. The sacred collapse, where the illusion falls apart and the true self begins to emerge. There comes a moment when awareness alone is no longer enough. You've seen the illusion, you've felt the repetition, you've understood the pattern, but still, the energy of the old self lingers. It doesn't just disappear when you recognize it, it dissolves when you face it, when you collapse it. This is the sacred moment of surrender, the turning point in every transformation. It's when the identity that once felt so familiar begins to lose its structure, and you step into the space between who you were and who you are becoming. The collapse is not gentle. It is the unraveling of everything false. It's when the stories you've been living by start to crumble, and the ego panics because it no longer knows who it is without them. You might feel lost, disoriented, even hopeless. This is what many call the dark night of the soul, a psychological and energetic death that makes space for rebirth. You are not breaking down, you are breaking open. To collapse an identity means to withdraw your energy from it. Every version of you exists because you feed it attention, belief, and emotion. The old self is like a holographic projection. It looks real, but it's sustained by your focus. When you stop identifying with its thoughts and emotional loops, it begins to flicker. And when you finally allow yourself to feel the emotions you've been avoiding, without trying to fix or resist them, the hologram starts to dissolve. This process is often messy. It's not the clean, linear kind of healing people talk about online. It's raw and non-linear. Some days you feel liberated, other days you feel like you're losing yourself. But that's the paradox. Losing the false self is the only way to find who you truly are. The identity collapse isn't about destroying yourself. It's about remembering that you were never the mask to begin with. To truly understand this collapse, imagine consciousness as a wave in the quantum field. Each possible version of you, the confident one, the broken one, the healed one, exists as a potential wave. The moment you observe yourself in a certain way, that wave collapses into form. The old you is a collapsed version of consciousness that has been re-observed and re-energized every day through habitual thoughts and emotions. When you stop observing yourself through that old lens, that version of reality can no longer exist. This is quantum law. What you no longer energize can no longer manifest. But collapse doesn't mean suppression. It's not about rejecting the old identity or fighting against it. That only feeds it more energy. Collapse happens through surrender, through allowing the entire structure to fall without trying to rebuild it too quickly. The ego wants to replace one identity with another right away. It wants to say, okay, I'm done being that version of me, now I'll be this better version. But the real transformation happens in the void between identities, in the silence where there's no definition, no label, no story. That's the 0 point. The stillness where creation begins. But before you reach that space, the collapse must complete itself. And during that transition you will feel resistance. The body may react with anxiety, the mind with confusion, the emotions with grief. Don't resist it, witness it. Every uncomfortable feeling that arises is the energy of the old self leaving your field. When you let yourself fully feel what you once avoided, you liberate the frequency that was keeping the old reality alive. Think of it like breaking a spell. The spell of the old self is held in place by emotional energy. Each unresolved emotion acts as an anchor keeping you in the same frequency band. When you finally face that emotion with full presence, when you say, I see you, I feel you, and I no longer fear you, the anchor lifts. Energy that was once trapped in fear now becomes available for creation. That is the power of collapse. It's a return of your life force. Here's what it looks like in everyday life. One day you realize that a certain thought pattern no longer feels real. Maybe it's the belief that you're not good enough, or that you have to struggle to be worthy. You've thought it for so long that it once felt like a fact, but suddenly it feels heavy and untrue. That's the beginning of collapse. You stop arguing with the thought, you stop feeding it emotion, and in that moment, it loses its gravitational pull. It's not that you let go of the old self, it's that it lets go of you. When you stop identifying with it, it has nowhere left to live. You've withdrawn the energy that kept it alive. That's why people often experience emotional release during deep healing: crying, shaking, laughing, even silence. These are signs that the old energetic identity is breaking apart. There's a beauty in that collapse if you can stay present with it. Because the very things you once thought would destroy you are actually freeing you. The heartbreak, the failure, the silence, all of it is dismantling the false walls around your being. You realize that every breakdown was a divine strategy, guiding you back to the truth of who you are. The collapse is not chaos, it's calibration. The universe is aligning you back to your authentic frequency. But remember, the ego will try to rebuild. It will try to pull you back into the old story with thoughts like, "This isn't working," or "You're losing yourself." These thoughts are not real, they're the hologram's final echoes. Stay in awareness. Observe them without judgment. The collapse completes itself when you stop trying to fix, control, or explain it. The less you do, the more space opens for the higher self to take over. You'll know you're close to the other side of collapse when silence begins to feel peaceful instead of empty. When you can sit in uncertainty and still feel anchored. When your old triggers lose their charge and what once caused pain now brings insight. That's when you've crossed the threshold. The identity you were holding onto has finally dissolved, and what remains is pure consciousness, unconditioned, limitless, and ready to create again. And that's the great paradox. In losing yourself, you find your real power. The collapse of identity is not an ending, it's the beginning of conscious creation. From this 0 point, everything becomes possible. You no longer create from effort or fear, you create from alignment and awareness. But before we explore that new stage, take a breath. Feel the silence that follows collapse. That silence is not emptiness, it's infinite potential waiting for your next command. After the collapse, everything becomes still. The noise that once filled your mind begins to fade, and what remains is a deep, infinite silence. It's not emptiness, it's the birthplace of all potential. This is the 0 point field, the pure space of awareness where you are no longer the old self, yet not fully the new one either. You stand at the threshold between timelines, between the version of you that was bound by identity and the version that is free to create. At this stage, you begin to sense life differently. Reality feels fluid, responsive, almost alive. You can feel your thoughts and emotions shaping the energy around you. The separation between you and the universe starts to dissolve. You no longer feel like a small being trying to manifest things from the outside world. You begin to understand that reality itself is mirroring your inner state. This is where reprogramming begins. To reprogram your reality from 0 point awareness means learning to create not from desire or fear, but from coherence, from a pure energetic state where your thoughts, emotions, and actions move in harmony. Most people try to manifest through control, by forcing, visualizing, or affirming. But that approach often comes from lack, from the belief that you don't already have what you seek. The 0 point field responds not to your words, but to your vibration. When you hold the frequency of wholeness, the universe aligns itself to match it effortlessly. Think of 0 point as a blank canvas, infinite, open, waiting for your consciousness to give it form. Your job is not to paint frantically over the past, but to clear the brush, to rest your awareness in stillness long enough for new inspiration to emerge. The more neutral you become, the more magnetic you are. Creation doesn't require emotional force, it requires energetic clarity. This neutrality doesn't mean detachment or indifference. It means alignment, the ability to hold peace even when outcomes are uncertain. When you rest in neutrality, you stop projecting need or fear into the field. The universe no longer has to mirror back chaos or resistance because you are no longer broadcasting it. You begin to realize that every emotional charge is a signal you send to creation, and every thought you sustain is a frequency you broadcast. From this space, you can begin to consciously choose new frequencies. Instead of saying, "I want love," you embody love. Instead of hoping for abundance, you breathe and feel the energy of abundance already alive in you. The field doesn't differentiate between imagination and reality, it only responds to vibration. So the more consistently you hold the energy of your desired state, the faster it materializes. The key is to create from being, not from doing. In the old paradigm, you were taught to work harder, plan better, or think positive. In the quantum paradigm, you learn to align your internal frequency with what already exists in potential. When you do this, you don't chase outcomes, they gravitate toward you. This is what the ancients called effortless creation, or Wu Wei, action through stillness, movement guided by inner harmony. As you stabilize this awareness, subtle shifts begin to occur. You notice synchronicities, intuitive nudges, and effortless openings in your life. You might think of someone and they message you. Opportunities arise without you seeking them. It's not coincidence, it's coherence. You've become a vibrational match to flow itself. One of the most important aspects of this stage is trust. The old identity thrived on control, it wanted proof, timelines, and certainty. The new state operates from surrender. You trust the unseen field to organize reality perfectly. You don't need to know how things will unfold, you only need to stay aligned with the feeling that they already have. That feeling is your bridge between dimensions. To stay in zero-point awareness, practice observing instead of reacting. When emotions arise, don't suppress or dramatize them. Witness them as energy passing through your field. Every time you remain present instead of reacting, you strengthen your coherence. You become a calm center in a moving world. The more you embody this inner stillness, the more the external world reshapes itself around your vibration. Another key element is gratitude, not the performative kind, but a genuine recognition of how reality responds to you. Gratitude is the signal that says, I already have. It grounds your vibration in abundance, even before evidence appears. Gratitude collapses resistance and opens the heart, allowing energy to circulate freely. From this space, creation becomes effortless. Reprogramming from zero-point awareness is not a single act, it's a new way of being. It means walking through the world with the awareness that everything is energy and you are its conductor. You don't need to manipulate the outer world because it's already reflecting your inner one. Every conversation, every coincidence, every delay, all of it becomes feedback from the field, showing you what frequency you're currently holding. This is mastery, to live in conscious alignment without the need for control. When you're in this state, life starts moving with precision and ease. You may not always get what your mind wants, but you'll always receive what your higher self intends. You begin to see that every event serves your expansion, and even what seems like delay or loss is simply redirection in perfect timing. Eventually, you realize that reprogramming isn't about changing the outer hologram, it's about remembering that you are the projector. You are both the wave and the field through which it moves. Creation becomes a natural expression of your consciousness. You no longer manifest from ego but from essence. You create not because something is missing, but because creation itself is joy. From this place, you understand that you don't need to escape reality to find peace. Reality bends to peace. The more anchored you are in the 0 point, the more fluidly you navigate life. Challenges no longer feel like threats. They feel like opportunities for refinement. You live in a constant conversation with the universe, one where energy replaces effort, intuition replaces strategy, and alignment replaces struggle. This is the state of true creative power, when your inner world and outer world dance in rhythm, when thought and energy merge, when every breath feels like a choice. You no longer have to reprogram reality because your awareness itself has become the program. Everything flows through you, effortlessly aligned with who you truly are. And as you settle deeper into that awareness, you realize, the field is not outside of you. You are the field. You are the consciousness shaping form, the stillness behind movement, the infinite observing itself. From this knowing, life becomes sacred, not because it's perfect but because it's alive, fluid, and always reflecting your awakening back to you. This is creation at its purest, effortless, intentional, and divine. When the old identity finally dissolves, what remains is silence. Not empty silence, but one filled with calm awareness. You realize that nothing outside you ever needed to change, it was always your perception that shaped reality. In this stillness you feel whole, complete, and deeply at peace. The struggle to become someone ends, and in its place arises a quiet knowing. You already are everything you've been seeking. From this state, life becomes simple. You act from alignment, not effort. You respond, not react. The people, opportunities, and experiences that match your true vibration begin to appear naturally. There's no forcing, no proving, no chasing, only flow. You are no longer living as the seeker, but as the awareness behind all seeking. And that's the ultimate truth. Nothing changes until you collapse the false identity, but once you do, everything changes, not because the world is different, but because you are. You are the awareness, the creator, and the creation itself. The infinite self has awakened, and from this moment on, life becomes a living meditation, effortless, conscious, and free.